Another Republican is walking out of the White House. And honestly, why should any of us be even slightly surprised at this point? The rats are fleeing the Titanic. But unfortunately for them, they are jumping straight into freezing cold water. We do not feel sorry for you leaving the White House. We do not care whether you are quitting to chase a bigger paycheck somewhere else or walking out the door in complete disgrace. The fact remains you were a fascist collaborator. You are a fascist collaborator, and you should be held fully accountable for that. That is exactly what I expect to happen to this latest Republican who has chosen to walk away. I want to break down why they left and what I think is coming next for a large number of MAGA loyalists who are now trying to find a new place for themselves outside of this administration. But to me, the real starting point here is a brand new corruption story coming straight out of this White House, and it is directly connected to this resignation. It involves Don Jr. and the money he is personally making off of the federal government.
What do you get when you provide an opportunity to mix war profiteering with total nepotism and the kind of grifting and allegedly corrupt self-dealing that's characterized this runaway Trump second term? Well, you get a story like this. A Pentagon deal worth $500 million going to a company that is linked to the president's son, Donald Trump Jr. And if you say, well, it's a big economy, what if it was a coincidence? Fair question. ProPublica, though, reviewed the Pentagon's own records, interviewed U.S. officials, and has this investigative report. A reminder that, as we've told you, journalism still matters these days. They found a request to loan hundreds of millions of dollars to this Trump-linked firm was made by a longtime Trump loyalist who's been in both terms and did a stint in prison, 3 to 4 months in federal jail, Peter Navarro, a senior Trump advisor who is, according to ProPublica, pretty friendly with Donald Trump Jr. Quote, the call came from the White House. We have to get this done. That's bad, including for any further and future corruption inquiries that could face Donald Trump Jr. or others who are not immune under Donald Trump's professional Supreme Court immunity. Now, this company, Vulcan, is considered a rare earths firm. Estimates of its valuation went up a lot after the deal was announced, by some estimates, tenfold. All of that could benefit Donald Trump Jr.'s venture capital firm, which has allegedly some kind of stake in the company. And as for those details, well, they could release them and we'd tell you exactly what the documents are. But as of this time, a lot of this is shrouded in secrecy. Trump Jr. says that he had nothing to do with the deal, and he says he did not discuss it with Peter Navarro. So again, as part of our fair reporting, that's his response, that even if ProPublica reporting is right, the ProPublica account that Mr. Navarro and those documents suggest a link, Don Jr. saying he's not aware of it. I also want to tell you what the Pentagon says. A spokesperson says, quote, no company receives preferential treatment. And they say Trump Jr. played no role in this record-setting deal. Now, we have other indications that Navarro and Trump Jr. at least know each other. I'll just show you that about a week before this news broke from the Pentagon announcing the deal, they were on Trump Jr.'s podcast.
You got pretty jacked in prison, though. I mean, you had the time. I mean, I was like, damn, Peter, you look ripped. When I met your now sweetheart, the first time was actually in a federal prison down in South Florida. I had to come visit my boy.
And you did. Thanks, my brother, for being there in my hardest of times. You know, when my back was against the wall, you had my back, brother. And,
it's my honor, my friend. Thank you.
So that's how warm they seem to each other in their own words. You can assess it for yourself, but you can see their link there, how they talk about each other.
That is where I want to begin before we get into the latest Republican exit and what it all means for Trump moving forward. This is a corruption story, unlike almost anything we have seen before, and that is genuinely a wild thing to say, considering how many times we have had to sit here and say exactly that. It is truly staggering how many different ways Donald Trump manages to find to personally profit off of the presidency. And in this case, he is doing it through his own sons. Let's be honest, Donald Trump Jr. might genuinely be the least capable person in the entire country. The idea that he is receiving hundreds of millions of dollars from our own government to supposedly deliver effective results is completely beyond comprehension. Honestly, at this point, I would almost rather they just write him a check for nothing just to get him to be quiet, go away, stop recording his podcast, and spare the rest of us from ever having to hear from him again. Because there is simply no version of reality in which anyone can seriously argue that Don Jr. is good at anything. And this is just another, and I do not even want to call it a PR problem because I actually want to come back to that phrase in a moment after we get through this story, but this is another major communication headache that Donald Trump is going to have to deal with. And that is precisely why his communications aide just quit. A top Trump aide has quit the White House. Donald Trump's special assistant and director of media affairs has announced she is leaving the White House to launch her own media booking and communications consulting firm called Cornerstone Strategics. And honestly, that is a pretty terrible name, Cornerstone Strategics. I kept waiting for it to say strategy. Anyway, Sonia Joy Nelson, a committed MAGA supporter, has worked alongside Trump since his 2024 campaign and has held various communications roles within Trump's political circle going all the way back to 2020. So she is walking away from the White House and stepping back from doing communications work for Donald Trump. And honestly, can you blame her? Just think about how incredibly difficult it must be to do communications work for Donald Trump on a daily basis. Imagine that being your actual job. Imagine having to put a positive spin on everything Trump does and says every single day. Just imagine that. Now I have absolutely zero sympathy for these people, and just because you walked out of the White House does not suddenly make you a decent human being. It does not. You are still the same person who chose to be there and do that work. And it is very clear that this particular top Trump aide, after years and years of loyalty, is leaving for one reason and one reason only: money. Whether that turns out to be as profitable as she is hoping, I genuinely do not know. I am not sure how much impressive communications work has actually come out of this White House. But what truly baffles me is that anyone would even attempt to spin for Donald Trump. That anyone would think they are capable of spinning for Donald Trump. That anyone could seriously believe they can make his words and actions sound reasonable to the public. And this brings me to something I really wanted to address, that phrase you hear thrown around constantly: the PR problem. You hear this from Republicans all the time. Nobody in politics ever wants to take real accountability for their failures. That is just how the game is played. But Republicans in particular love to say they have a PR problem or a messaging problem. And to be fair, you heard the exact same thing from Democrats after the 2024 election, that they had a serious messaging problem. And sure, the brand is not in great shape. Americans do not trust them, and we could get deep into all the reasons why that would honestly be a 10-hour conversation for another day. But here is the truth: it is not a messaging problem when your actual policies are not delivering for people. It is not a messaging problem when you are failing to meet the moment. Like Abigail Spanberger, and I know we are getting a little off track from the Republicans, but we will come right back. She vetoed a bill that would have stopped ICE from entering hospitals, churches, and schools in Virginia. What? She also voted against, or rather vetoed, a new worker protection law. What? And she is blocking the legalization of medical marijuana. What? What is she doing? None of that is some bold centrist position. Being pro-worker, believing that marijuana charges should not destroy someone's life, and we know those charges fall disproportionately on Black people, and standing up against ICE, storming into hospitals and schools, those are normal, reasonable positions. Those are not radical ideas. So, of course, that kind of governing hurts Democrats. And the damage it is doing to Abigail Spanberger right now is not a messaging problem. I know I have gone a little off track here, but I think this point really needs to be said. That is not a messaging problem. That is a policy failure, plain and simple. And I want to get back to my original point. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest. It has been sitting with me for a while now. When Donald Trump's people say he has a PR problem, or when Megyn Kelly says Donald Trump has a PR problem, what they are really doing is refusing to face the simple truth that the president they support is a crook, a fraud, a liar, and a criminal.
We just found out Donald Trump has been engaged in an insider trading racket at scale inside the White House on a daily basis. In the first 3 months of this year, he made 3,700 trades, over $200 million worth of trades, using the information that only he possesses, using the power that he has as president to boost the value of his trades. Here's two examples. Trump bought a bunch of NVIDIA stock a week before he announced that NVIDIA was going to be able to sell some of its most advanced chips to China. He had inside information, he bought a bunch of stock, and then he inflated the value of the stock. Sometimes he does it in just a 24-hour period. He bought a whole bunch of Apple stock on the same day that he used his platforms to celebrate how much he believes in Apple, how much he loves Apple, how much he appreciates its CEO, Tim Cook. He literally is just using the White House platform to be able to engage in mass scale insider trading. He's manipulating the price of these equities he is buying and cashing in. This has never happened before.
That is what he is. Full stop. And he has surrounded himself entirely with yes men and yes women who do nothing but tell him he is doing a fantastic job. So it is not that they have a PR problem. They have a policy problem. Because every single policy they push serves Donald Trump personally, serves Don Jr., serves the corrupt inner circle, and serves the billionaire class. And if that is your actual policy, there is no way to spin that. None. You cannot make that sound good no matter how skilled you are. So honestly, if I were a communications advisor for Donald Trump, I would want out too. Because how do you advise that? The man can barely finish a sentence. And we are supposed to sit here and talk about a communications strategy? You do not have one. There is no strategy. The honest advice would be resign, leave, walk away, just go. But again, everything comes back to the same core problem. Every policy is built to benefit the wealthy. And the wealthy, more than anyone else, means the Trump family itself. Now, Chris Murphy, who we actually spoke with recently, put together a really strong breakdown of all of Donald Trump's stock trading, and I think it is worth getting into. This is the corruption administration. It is entirely and completely built around personal profit for Donald Trump and his family. That is what this whole thing is. So, of course, Republicans are going to start running for the exits. And look, I know some people might say, Jack, we need to welcome everyone, big tent and all that. But I genuinely do not have much love for this latest wave of former Trump loyalists who have suddenly decided that criticizing Trump is now the more popular and profitable position to take. People who spent years kissing up to him, tweeting glowing things about him, being his most enthusiastic cheerleaders, and now, the moment the winds shift and the money starts drying up, they want to rebrand themselves as voices of reason. They want to show up on liberal podcasts. They want to act like they have had some kind of awakening. I do not buy it, and I do not like it. These people are not going to show up to vote. They are not going to organize for a Democratic candidate. They are going to do what they have always done, chase fame, chase money, and move on. They will contribute absolutely nothing to actually building a coalition that can win. Now, some people might not like me dismissing these so-called MAGA converts. But I think there is a real and important difference here, and not that I agree with Tim Miller on everything, though he is a friend and I have a lot of respect for him. There is a massive difference between someone like Tim Miller and someone like Tucker Carlson. Tim Miller walked away from the Republican Party when it still had some appearance of normalcy. He gave up real career opportunities to do it. I am pretty sure he was even approached about working in the Trump White House and turned it down. That took something. But when someone like Marjorie or Tucker or Candace or Megyn Kelly suddenly decides to start criticizing Trump right at the moment when Trump is the most unpopular president in modern history, when his illegal and deeply unpopular war is falling apart, when the whole thing is collapsing and they do it purely because bashing Trump now gets more clicks and more views, that is not bravery. That is not a conscience. That is just another business decision. Tim Miller actually went out and worked to elect Kamala Harris. I do not see any of these people doing the same for AOC or Gavin Newsom or any other future Democratic candidate. I just do not see it happening. So no, I am not going to praise them. I am not going to celebrate them. I am not going to pretend this is some kind of meaningful political awakening, but I will absolutely laugh at them. And that is exactly what we will continue to do right here on this show. If you want to support that, as always, hit that subscribe button and leave a like on this video. If you made it all the way to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Keep on fighting, everyone. Do not let them silence you. Head over to Spotify, follow the show. It's the Jack Coachella Show, and leave a 5-star review while you are there. And until next time, I'll see you then.